Have you ever wondered why your rent is ridiculously high, why a bunch of bananas suddenly costs a small fortune, or why minimum wage laws spark such massive debates? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to completely demystify the invisible forces driving everyday prices and see exactly what happens when governments try to step in and control them.
It's a huge, everyday question that affects all of us, right? When rent is too high or wages feel way too low, can a government simply stroke a pen, decree a fix, and rewrite the rules of the market? Politicians promise this kind of thing all the time, but the economic reality? It's a whole lot more complex.
To figure out why, here is our agenda. 1. How markets find balance. 2. The price ceiling problem. 3. The price floor dilemma. And 4. When free markets fail. Section 1. How markets find balance.
Think of markets kind of like living, breathing organisms. They react. When something changes out of nowhere, say consumer tastes shift and suddenly everyone absolutely must have a standing desk, demand just shoots up. And when that demand goes up, the natural equilibrium price and the actual quantity traded are going to follow right along with it. Imagine a massive ad campaign drops and triggers this huge, sudden surge in demand for holidays in New Zealand. Bam! We've got a temporary shortage of 8,000 holidays. So what happens next? The market naturally pushes prices up, let's say from $1,600 to $1,900 until things cool down and a new equilibrium is reached. On the flip side, if a pandemic drops the demand for petrol, we're suddenly sitting on an excess supply of 20,000 liters a day. Retailers have absolutely no choice but to slash prices down to $1 a liter just to find that new, lower equilibrium. The market is always hunting for balance. Now let's flip it to the producer side. If something changes with supply, like a crazy new tech that makes microchips dirt cheap to build, supply surges, pushing prices way down and quantities way up. But if a factory burns down or resources just vanish, supply shrinks, and you guessed it, prices spike.
Say a bunch of new suit hire businesses open up in town. All that extra inventory means rental prices naturally drop. But what happens when nature intervenes? Imagine a massive storm, like Cyclone Yasi, wiping out an entire banana crop.
Here is the absolute chain reaction. A cyclone hits, supply drastically drops, and suddenly we're staring at a massive shortage of 50,000 kilos of bananas per week. People still want smoothies, so this triggers intense consumer competition for the few bananas actually left on the shelves. As a result, prices naturally skyrocket to restore balance. Honestly, the market doesn't care about fairness. It only cares about finding that equilibrium. But what if the government decides those natural prices are just unfair? What if $1,900 for a holiday or sky-high banana prices are deemed totally unacceptable? This is exactly where authorities step in to rewrite market forces. And they usually pull one of two main levers: price ceilings to cap costs and keep things cheap, or price floors to guarantee a minimum income. Let's look at Section 2, the price ceiling problem.
So, a price ceiling is exactly what it sounds like, a legal cap on how much a seller can charge. But for this to actually work, the government must set that maximum price below the natural market equilibrium. If equilibrium is $10 and you set the ceiling at $15, it does literally nothing. But set it at $5, now it bites. Instantly, though, this leads to demand vastly outstripping supply. Let's use rent control as a prime example. Say the natural market rent is $1,200 a month, but the government steps in and caps it at $800. Well, at $800, tons of people want apartments, so demand surges to 70,000. But landlords, they are absolutely not willing to supply as many units for that cheap, so available apartments drop to 50,000. Do the math, and the direct result is a massive, immediate shortage of 20,000 rental units. Picture being one of 50 applicants begging for a single, cheap apartment. This desperation breeds some seriously dark, unintended consequences. We're talking under-the-table bribes just to get a key, crumbling buildings because landlords have zero financial incentive to fix them, and rampant discrimination. The supposed fix essentially birthed a whole new set of nightmares. Moving on to Section 3, the price floor dilemma. Here, the thinking is that the market equilibrium is just too low to be fair to sellers or workers. A price floor is a legally established minimum, and just like the ceiling, for a floor to actually change anything, it has to be set above the natural equilibrium. But artificially keeping the price high, that completely flips the script, causing a massive excess of supply over demand. Let's look at the minimum wage for unskilled labor. If the market naturally settles at a wage where the number of jobs perfectly matches available workers, great. But if a wage-fixing authority mandates a much higher minimum, a gap opens up. More people want to work at that shiny new rate, but businesses can afford to hire way fewer of them. The result is a total surplus of labor. And by surplus of labor, economists really just mean unemployment. It's a tough pill to swallow. This well-meaning intervention inevitably leaves some folks totally shut out of the labor market. In other industries like agriculture, price floors lead to insane overproduction, farmers growing crops that literally nobody wants to buy at the artificially inflated price, causing a tragic waste of resources. So if government interventions consistently cause huge housing shortages and labor surpluses, does that mean free markets are flawless?
Section 4. When free markets fail.
The answer is no, not exactly. Sometimes the market completely breaks itself. We call this a market failure, a scenario where the price system just fails to operate efficiently, creating a massive headache for society. In these specific cases, government intervention isn't just an option, it's absolutely necessary to keep society functioning. When the invisible hand fumbles the ball, it typically happens in one of three ways. Externalities, a failure to provide essential public goods, think lighthouses or national defense, stuff private companies can't easily charge for, or a severe lack of competition. Let's dive into externalities for a second. Think of these as spillover effects onto totally innocent bystanders. They can be really negative, like a factory pumping toxic pollution into a town. The buyer and seller are thrilled, but the townspeople are paying a steep health cost that totally isn't reflected in the product's price. Externalities can also be positive, though, like widespread education benefiting society at large with a smarter workforce. Another wildly fascinating market failure is when competition simply dies. This often happens when businesses secretly collude in a dark room to form a cartel. By teaming up, they intentionally murder competition. They basically hijack those supply and demand curves we just studied to artificially gouge consumers with sky-high prices. When that happens, the government absolutely has to step in and break them up. We've definitely covered a lot of ground in this explainer. We've seen the iron rules of natural supply and demand, the sheer chaos of well-meaning price controls, and the genuine societal dangers of market failures. It all leaves us with one massive thing to ponder. Knowing the mathematical certainties of those shortages and surpluses, when is a market failure actually dangerous enough to justify all the risks of a government rewriting the rules? It's the ultimate balancing act. Thanks for tuning in. Keep asking the hard questions, and I'll catch you next time.